My 7-year-old daughter stood in front of a crowded table, dressed in the sparkly gold dress she picked out herself. Her little fingers gripped a small gift box. Every adult in the room was laughing, clinking glasses, too distracted to notice her, except me. I was watching closely. She looked directly at her grandmother, lifted the box slightly, and said, "Grandma, Dad told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." Everything stopped. Forks froze midair. The music faded into background noise. Her grandmother, my husband's mother, gave a tight, confused smile, as if it were a joke. But when she opened the box, she didn't laugh. She screamed. A sharp, guttural sound tore through the room, louder than the Christmas carols, louder than the gasps, louder than the silence that followed. People rushed over to see what was inside. But I already knew. My husband had packed that box months ago. He told me it was for the day his mother went too far. That day was today. Let me tell you how we got here. How my daughter became invisible in a room full of gifts. And how that small box shattered every fake smile that had held this family together for years. When I married Travis, I thought I was marrying into a big, loving family. They were loud, close-knit, always organizing cookouts, game nights, and holiday parties. His mother, Lorraine, was the center of it all. She had a voice that could quiet a room and an opinion about everything. I thought that was just how strong women ran families. I respected her. I really wanted her to like me. At first, she acted like she did. She smiled during dinners, complimented my cooking, hugged me goodbye. But it didn't take long before I noticed the shift. She would forget to include me in family group texts. She would comment on how different I was from the women in their family, how I didn't grow up with the same values. It was always subtle, just enough to make me question whether it was in my head. Then Zia came along. Zia is my daughter from my first marriage. She was 2 when Travis came into our lives. He didn't hesitate. He stepped in with patience, love, and every bit of the care a father should give. When we got married, he adopted her legally. We never used the word step in our house. She was his daughter in every way that mattered, and he was her dad. But Lorraine never accepted that. At first, she pretended. She'd send Zia a birthday card or bring her a little something on holidays, but the difference was always there. Zia didn't get invited to cousin sleepovers. She wasn't included in matching Christmas pajamas. She would sit quietly during family events while the other grandkids were doted on. Lorraine would call Maddie her little princess, buy Jonah his favorite sports gear, and then hand Zia a plastic toy or a book she clearly never looked at. Zia noticed. Kids always do. I tried to explain it away. I told Zia that Grandma was just forgetful, that she loved her in her own way, but every year it got harder to justify. At Thanksgiving, Lorraine gave each grandchild a personalized plate with their name painted in gold. Zia's seat was set with one of the extras from the back of the cabinet. That night, Zia whispered to me, "Maybe she thinks I'm just visiting." I didn't know what to say. Travis heard it, too. He didn't speak up, but I saw his jaw clench. That was the first time I thought maybe he was starting to see it, too. Still, we kept showing up. I told myself it was for the bigger picture, for family unity, for tradition, for Zia to grow up with cousins and holiday memories. I told myself love didn't need to be proven with gifts or matching pajamas. But deep down, I was lying to myself. I was staying quiet because I didn't want to be seen as the problem. I didn't want to make Travis choose between his mother and me. And every time I swallowed my hurt, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing for Zia, that being the bigger person would teach her something important. But I didn't realize it was teaching her that being treated as less was something we had to accept. Travis and I argued about it more than once. I would bring it up in quiet, exhausted voices after Zia had gone to bed. He would say he noticed, but didn't know how to handle it. He didn't want to hurt his mom. I asked him, "What about Zia?" He would nod, promise to talk to her eventually, then go silent again. By the time this particular Christmas rolled around, I was emotionally worn thin. I had packed matching outfits for the kids. I brought extra cookies to share. I wrapped thoughtful gifts for everyone in the family. I told myself, this year might be different. But something inside me had changed, too. I was no longer hoping for approval. I was watching, waiting, preparing for the moment when being quiet would no longer be the kind thing to do. And that moment came faster than I expected. It was the way Lorraine smiled as she handed Maddie a brand new iPad, how she kissed Jonah's cheek before handing him a thick envelope of cash. Then she turned to Zia, handed her a lavender candle, and said, "Didn't want you to feel completely left out." That was when I looked at Travis. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. But something in his face shifted, and that's when I knew he hadn't forgotten what he told Zia months ago. He hadn't forgotten the box. Neither had she. Lorraine's house was always perfect during the holidays. She had a huge artificial tree that reached the ceiling, trimmed with gold ornaments and twinkling lights. Every branch looked like it came out of a catalog. The fireplace was lit, the table was set with fine china, and there were so many wrapped gifts under the tree, you could barely see the base. It should have felt magical. But as soon as we walked in, I felt my stomach tighten. Zia walked in ahead of me, her curls bouncing with each step, wearing the gold dress she picked out herself. She clutched a small wrapped gift in her hands, the one she had made for Lorraine in art class, a painted wooden trinket box with little glued-on rhinestones. She had written, "Grandma," in crooked glitter letters across the lid. She was so proud of it. Lorraine barely looked at her when we said hello. She hugged Maddie and Jonah right away, laughing loudly and saying how big they were getting. She handed Maddie a velvet pouch and winked. "Don't open it yet," she said, smiling. Then she turned to Zia and said, "Hi, sweetie. You look festive." She glanced down at the gift in Zia's hand, took it without really looking, and set it on a side table like it was a napkin someone handed her by mistake. Zia didn't say anything. She looked at me for a moment, then took a seat on the couch next to Maddie. The kids chatted and played while the adults made small talk. I sat at the edge of it all, watching my daughters shrink slowly into the background of her own family. After dinner, it was time for gifts. Lorraine always made a production out of it. She sat in her armchair and handed them out one by one, calling each child up like they were royalty. Jonah was first. He opened an envelope stuffed with cash. Everyone clapped. Maddie went next. She opened a new iPad and a matching bracelet set made of real silver and crystals. She hugged Lorraine so hard the iPad nearly slipped from her hands. Then Lorraine called Zia's name. There was a long pause before she held up a small gift bag and said, "This is for you, sweetheart. I didn't want you to feel completely left out." Zia stood up quietly, walked over, and took the bag. Inside was a lavender-scented candle in a plain glass jar. There was a tag attached that read, "To Travis's girl." That was it. No envelope, no toy, no sparkle, just a candle and a tag that felt like a knife. I looked at Travis. He was staring at the floor, his fingers laced tightly together, jaw tight. He didn't say a word. Zia sat down next to me, resting the candle in her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't frown, but I could see her pulling inward, slowly, closing off. The kind of quiet that stays with a child long after the day ends. Lorraine moved on as if nothing had happened. She handed out more gifts. Everyone laughed, ate dessert, toasted with champagne, but I wasn't really hearing any of it. I couldn't take my eyes off Zia. She stayed polite, answering Lorraine with a soft, "Thank you," when asked, and pretended to be interested in the bracelet Maddie was showing off. Later in the kitchen, I confronted Travis. "You need to say something," I whispered. "She called your daughter, Travis's girl, like she's a guest here." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I told Zia to give her the box if this ever happened again. I told her she could decide when it was time." I stared at him. "You're serious?" He nodded. She remembers. Back in the car on the way home, Zia sat quietly in the back seat, holding her candle. Her voice was small when she asked, "Is Grandma mad at me?" I turned around and reached for her hand, but Travis spoke first. "No, sweetheart," he said. "Grandma just forgot something important. But I think she's about to remember." Zia looked down at the box in her lap, the one Travis had given her months ago, wrapped in simple red paper. She nodded once and said, "Then I want to give it to her tomorrow." That's when I knew this wasn't just another ignored moment we were going to brush off. This wasn't going to be one more lesson in patience or polite silence. Something was shifting. My daughter wasn't going to stay invisible. Not anymore. When we got home that night, I helped Zia out of the car while Travis grabbed the leftover cookies from the back seat. She clutched the candle in one hand and the small box in the other. Both wrapped like fragile memories. I could tell she was holding in more than just the weight of her things. She was quiet, but her face held something calm and steady, like she'd already made up her mind. I asked if she wanted to take a bath or watch a movie before bed. She said no. She just wanted to get ready for tomorrow. I paused. "What's tomorrow?" She looked at me like I should know. "Brunch at Grandma's. I'm giving her the box." That was the first time I felt my breath catch in my chest. Not from fear, but from the simple certainty in her voice. There was no hesitation, no questions, just a decision made by a 7-year-old who had finally seen enough. Travis came into the room as I was brushing Zia's hair. She looked up at him and asked, "Can I still give it to her?" He nodded. "It's your choice, Zia. I told you that from the beginning." She smiled, but it wasn't the usual bubbly grin she gave when we promised her ice cream or told her we were going to the zoo. It was smaller, more focused, like she understood the weight of what she was carrying, like she knew what it meant to be heard. After she went to bed, I finally asked Travis what exactly he had put in that box. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table and looked exhausted, like he had been holding in a storm for too long. "A few months ago, I was watching her play with Maddie during Jonah's birthday party," he said. "They were all in the backyard. Lorraine called the kids in for cake. Maddie and Jonah got slices with extra frosting and sprinkles. Zia got the end piece. No decoration, no candle, nothing. I remembered that day. I had tried to tell myself it wasn't intentional." She came up to me and asked if she was someone's cousin, too, he continued. "That night, I sat down and wrote a letter. I printed the adoption papers again. I packed the box. I told Zia she could give it to my mom if she ever made her feel like she didn't belong again." My throat tightened. "And you never told me?" "I didn't want to make it a fight," he said. "I didn't want to drag you into another argument about my family, but I needed Zia to know I saw it. I needed her to feel like she had something to stand on." I had spent years hoping Travis would speak up, years waiting for him to draw a line. And here he was, having quietly drawn it, not with shouting or confrontation, but by handing his daughter the power to say enough. The next morning, Zia got ready like it was picture day at school. She asked if she could wear her sparkly gold dress again. She wanted to redo her curls. She chose the same glittery headband she wore the day Travis signed the adoption papers. She didn't say it was for luck. She didn't need to. I knew. In the car, she held the red box on her lap with both hands. No fidgeting, no second thoughts. When we arrived at Lorraine's house, everything looked the same. The same wreath on the door, the same smell of cinnamon and ham, the same polite greetings and hollow compliments. But something felt different this time. Not in the room, just in us. We were no longer visitors trying to fit in. We were a family walking in with our truth. Zia sat quietly during brunch. She didn't touch her plate much. Lorraine complimented Maddie's dress 3 times. She didn't mention Zia's once. When everyone had finished eating and started passing around desserts, Zia stood up. No one noticed at first. Then she walked to the head of the table, right where Lorraine sat with her wine glass, and placed the box in front of her. "Grandma," she said clearly, "Dad told me to give this to you if you ever ignored me again." The room went still. Lorraine gave a small, confused laugh. "What's this, sweetheart?" Zia didn't answer. She stepped back and sat down. Travis reached for my hand under the table and held it tight. The box was still closed, but not for long. Lorraine picked up the box like it was a prank. She turned it over in her hands, raised an eyebrow, and gave a half-laugh that didn't match the silence spreading across the table. Everyone was watching now. Travis's sister looked confused. Maddie stared. Jonah kept eating a cookie, not understanding what was happening. Lorraine peeled the red wrapping paper slowly, like she was performing for the room, but her smile faded the moment she opened the lid. On top sat a photo in a white frame. It was of Travis in a hospital chair, holding Zia the day she turned 2. She had cake on her cheeks and her arms wrapped around his neck. Someone had taken it during her adoption celebration. The caption written in gold at the bottom read, "Day 1 Dad." Beneath the photo was a sealed envelope. Lorraine's face shifted, her mouth pulled tight as she reached inside and opened the envelope with trembling hands. She pulled out the first document. It was a copy of Zia's adoption papers, legal, signed by a judge, with Travis's name clearly printed under "Father." The court seal was stamped at the bottom. She blinked hard, like maybe if she looked again, it would say something different, but it didn't. Next, she opened a folded letter. It was written in Travis's handwriting. He didn't flinch as she started to read, but I felt his grip tighten around my fingers under the table. Lorraine's lips moved as she read silently, her face falling with every word. It said, "Mom, if you're reading this, it means you have hurt my daughter again. Not just mine by love, but mine by law, by promise, and by choice. I have spent years watching you treat Zia like an outsider. I hoped it would change. I hoped you would open your heart the way I did. But if she ever had to hand you this box, it means she saw what I saw, that you don't consider her real. Zia is my child. She is your granddaughter. And if you cannot love her equally, then you don't love me. I will not allow her to grow up thinking she has to earn a place in this family. She already belongs. She always has. If you cannot accept that, you will no longer be welcome in our home or in our lives. Travis." When she finished reading, Lorraine dropped the letter onto the table like it burned her fingers. Her face was pale. She looked around, searching for someone to save her. No one spoke. Then, like something inside her cracked, she screamed. Not a sob, not a gasp, a scream, sharp and raw, like a curtain had been ripped away from everything she had pretended to be. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood. Maddie flinched. Jonah froze. Her sister reached out to steady the table, but Lorraine had already backed away, muttering, "I can't believe you'd embarrass me like this." Travis finally stood. "We didn't embarrass you," he said. "You did that all by yourself." Lorraine pointed at me. "This is her doing. This girl turned you against your own mother." I stood too. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "No," I said. "Zia gave you a gift. She gave you the chance to see her. You chose not to." For a moment, all you could hear was the sound of the fireplace crackling. Zia sat quietly, watching, not scared, not confused, just watching the truth unfold. Travis turned to her and held out his hand. "Ready to go?" She nodded and stood up. I grabbed our coats and helped her into hers. No one stopped us. No one said goodbye. We walked out together, me, my husband, and our daughter, leaving behind the house filled with decorations, perfect centerpieces, and empty approval. In the car, Zia buckled her seatbelt and looked straight ahead. She didn't say anything right away. Then, softly, she asked, "Do you think she read the whole letter?" Travis looked at her in the rearview mirror and said, "Every single word." Zia smiled. Not big, not dramatic, just enough to tell me that something inside her had settled. Not because Lorraine had changed, but because she didn't need her to anymore. We didn't go back to Lorraine's house after that day. No more birthday parties, no more forced holidays, no more pretending. There were no angry follow-up texts or emotional phone calls, just silence. She didn't reach out, and we didn't chase her. For once, there was peace. At first, I thought Zia might ask about her. I expected questions, maybe some sadness, but what I saw instead was a quiet freedom. She stopped watching the door during family events. She stopped asking why she didn't get the same presents or why her name was left off the group crafts. She stopped measuring her worth by someone else's treatment. Something had shifted. One afternoon, a week after Christmas, a small padded envelope arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Zia. Inside was a bracelet, silver with a tiny heart charm, and a handwritten note from Maddie. It said, "I'm sorry Grandma was mean. You're my cousin forever. I picked this with my allowance." Zia read the note twice, then slid the bracelet on her wrist. She didn't ask if she could wear it every day. She just did. That single act meant more to her than a dozen expensive gifts ever could. It reminded me that children don't need perfection. They just need to feel chosen. They need to know someone sees them, hears them, and believes they matter. As for Travis, something changed in him, too. For years, he had carried the guilt of standing between his mother and his daughter. He had tried to bridge two worlds that would never truly meet. But after that brunch, I saw something different in his eyes. Not just resolve, but relief. He had made his choice. He chose Zia without apology, without conditions, and without regret. One night, I found him sitting on the edge of her bed while she slept, just watching her breathe. He looked up at me and said, "I should have done it sooner." "You did it exactly when she needed you to," I told him. We started making new traditions, smaller ones, slower, more intentional. Zia helped us decorate cookies for neighbors. We built pillow forts and watched movies in pajamas. We didn't try to replace what was lost. We just focused on building what was real. People talk about cutting off toxic family like it's easy, like it's a clean line you draw and move on. It's not. It hurts. Even when it's necessary, even when you're right. But what hurts more is watching your child shrink to make room for someone else's comfort. I won't do that again. I won't ask my daughter to keep accepting less just because someone else refuses to give more. That day at Lorraine's table wasn't about drama or revenge. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about Zia taking her space in a room where she had always been treated like a guest. It was about her saying, "I belong here," even when someone tried to make her feel like she didn't. And it was about us, her parents, finally standing behind her with more than just words. Zia never talks about the box anymore. She doesn't need to. But I kept it. It's in a drawer in my bedroom, right next to her first baby shoes and the hospital bracelet from the day she was born. I keep it not because I want to remember the pain, but because I want to remember the strength it took to face it. The strength in her voice, the quiet power in her choice. She's only 7, but she taught me something I'll carry forever. Family is not who makes the biggest show of loving you when people are watching. It's not who shares your last name or your blood type. Family is who shows up when it matters, who protects you when it's hard, who makes you feel safe when the rest of the world makes you feel small. Zia has that now, not because someone gave it to her, but because she claimed it for herself. And in doing that, she gave it to us, too. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you're fighting for or someone you finally stood up to, then take a second to like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Leave a comment below. I read every single one. Your stories matter here. And if you want more true stories about real moments that change everything, subscribe to Payback Diaries and turn on notifications. There's more to come. Because sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truth.